We got shocking Nintendo Switch 2 news this launch weekend. Hello everyone, this is AndresRestart, and since the Switch 2 launched on June 5th, over these last few days across this weekend, we have learned much about the console, its games, including Mario Kart World, some surprising details within this game, but also even more has surfaced from Summer Games Fest as well. There have been a variety of announcements, some of which are relevant to Nintendo fans. We have an update on Silksong, we've gotten our first look at the next big Game Freak game, and it's leaving many fans wondering how this game could look so amazing compared to the Pokemon games. But really there is much to discuss today, especially having to do with the Switch 2 itself. There's a variety of little things that people have noticed about the console that I definitely would like to speak on today. But before going forward, let me point out I am aiming for a goal of 60,000 subscribers. So if you find yourself enjoying my content, your subscription would be appreciated. So for this first little story here, Hayden Virus on Twitter shared something from what they discovered of the Switch 2 menu. Now, I'm not 100% certain this is totally accurate, but I will at least say it's extremely interesting. So basically what Virus, a musician of 16 years, is arguing here is that the note that is played when you click on the View More button in the Switch 2 menu is the first note you hear in the Earthbound theme. So this might be a really cool little Easter egg within the Switch 2 menu. The Switch 2 has a variety of little neat sound effects, far more than the Switch 1. So I think it's certainly plausible. Nintendo has been known for throwing in little subtle Easter eggs about their history with their consoles, so this might be the case. Now moving on to some more concrete news, we have learned about a variety of Switch 1 games that are playing better on Switch 2, but were not announced to be playing better on Switch 2. Smash Bros. Ultimate reportedly has improved loading speeds, Bayonetta 3 runs at 60 frames per second, Batman Arkham Knight runs at a steady 30, Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity uses an uncapped frame rate, letting the title run much better on Switch 2. Witcher 3 now runs at a solid 30. Pokemon Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl has improved loading speeds, and Animal Crossing New Horizons also has improved loading speeds in multiple areas. So it looks like, even without a patch, the Switch 2 is brute force improving a variety of Switch 1 games. Now I do think it should be noted that the backwards compatibility of Switch 2 is kind of custom, right? They have to work on each game to make sure they work appropriately, and Nintendo's continually going back and looking at different games to make sure that they are compatible, improving their compatibility. So there could be some work being done here, but the point is a lot of these games are performing significantly better on Switch 2. And there may be more. Personally, I really like the idea of playing Smash Ultimate on my Switch 2, and the loading between matches being a bit better. And we've even seen that when you're changing around costumes, it changes more seamlessly now. That was always a weird thing when changing your costumes in the Smash menu, they would have a little bit of a delay. Moving on to another interesting story here, this content creator, Will It Work, has said that with just a few cables and a free app, you can actually use your iPhone as a USB camera instead of having to buy one. So for those looking for ways to save money and still enjoy this feature, this might be an option for you. But when we take a look at some of these options listed here, you see that the cable here costs $18 and then the other one costs $13. So that can add up there, the HDMI cable and the HDMI capture cable. But if you have them around, you can try this out and you may not need to pick up a separate USB camera for your Switch 2. For the full tutorial, this video will be linked in the description below. Now, something else we learned over the course of the weekend is that the YouTube team is working to bring the app to Switch 2. So you might find this kind of funny because perhaps you already downloaded over everything from your Switch 1 to your Switch 2, and you might have seen your YouTube app or your Crunchyroll app or whatever else, and you have been under the assumption that they're just going to work on your console. Well, if you try it out, you'll see that it does not work. I actually was a little surprised that they even downloaded over because I had heard that apps like Crunchyroll were not going to be compatible with Switch 2. So I had tried using the app and well, it does not work even though it downloaded onto my console. So I eventually just deleted the app. So right now, a lot of these different streaming apps do not work. There weren't even that many streaming apps on the Switch 1 to begin with. But with the Switch 2, I imagine there shouldn't be too much issue to get these apps over. If anything, it should be easier than for Switch 1, and it's really just a matter of time. Of course, perhaps Nintendo won't really think it's really that necessary to bring these apps over, because it wasn't really that much of a focus on Switch 1, and you saw the kind of success they saw on Switch 1, so there is also that to consider. But at least we know that the YouTube app at some point is going to make it over to Switch 2, and I don't think it's going to take that long. Something else that is worthy of note is that Nintendo will repair your Joy-Con 2s for free if you have some sort of issue or Joy-Con drift, which should be kind of obvious, I would say, because within the first year, guess what? You have a warranty through Nintendo, but people are reporting about this, and I guess that's because people are concerned about Joy-Con drift. I haven't experienced any issues with my console. I do not think there is a widespread issue. There's always going to be the occasional person that has an issue with their piece of hardware. You always see people report about this at launch. It does not mean that there are widespread issues. It's just when we're talking about millions of systems out there, there are going to be a few here and there that are going to have some issues. And if there are, Nintendo will fix it for free, as they should. And now we're moving on to the Mario Kart World section for today's news video. Now, I am giving a little bit of a warning in case you want to go in totally blind to Mario Kart World, and you don't want to know how many tracks or intermission tracks there are in the game, or how to do certain secret tricks and things like that, or perhaps a particular mode that you may be able to unlock after a lot of playtime and doing random things. So if you're that particular about spoilers, here's your warning. That said, I don't think any of these spoilers will ruin your experience in any way. So Get Lucky on Twitter wrote this: there are 202 unique routes between tracks in Mario Kart World. If you raced on all of them, it would take over 10 hours. Anyway, spent yesterday doing that. Here is all of them. And so they put together an entire video. I will have the video linked in the description below if you want to check it out. But this just goes to show just how massive Mario Kart World actually is. That's a lot of terrain to race through. Some people have already unlocked Mirror Mode in Mario Kart World, and there's quite a bit of debate in terms of how you go about unlocking it. What seems to be clear is that you have to beat the Special Cup at least a second time. However, it does seem like there are other conditions that need to be met, and we're not entirely sure what they are. Some people are saying that you have to collect at least 10 Peach medallions throughout the open free roam world of Mario Kart, which I don't think is too hard to do. There may be other conditions, people are not entirely sure. This is a developing story, as the game has just gotten out, and this is a vast game with a lot of interesting things to discover and figure out. But yes, there is a mirror mode. I'm not going to show any more to avoid spoilers for people, but there are some interesting Easter eggs and cutscenes involved with this new mode. And in what perhaps is the most shocking Mario Kart World news we have to discuss today, is this new strat discovered, or at least shared on Twitter, by Luigi's sidekick. So, putting on the footage here, what you're seeing is Waluigi tilting the camera to the right, and when he does so and launches the green shell is shot to the right. You can shoot items laterally to the side in Mario Kart World, something we've never been able to do before. This can be really useful if someone is to your side and you want to knock them out, so there's a lot of potential here. However, as you're noticing, yes, you have to move the camera. For those that don't know, you can control the camera in Mario Kart World regardless of mode. And this is a new thing we've never been able to do before. But if you think about it, this might be a bit challenging, because normally when you're racing around, you are pressing the A button to accelerate with your thumb, and so it's going to be a little harder to move around that camera while pressing the gas button, right? So you might think, well, do I have to do the claw technique where you press the face buttons, including the A button, with your index or middle finger, and then use your thumb to turn the camera so you can shoot items? Sounds kind of cumbersome, I agree. But on the Switch 2, remapping buttons is a lot easier, and something I've done with my Switch 2 Pro controller. It's one of the features of the Switch 2 Pro controller. You can also do this with a Switch 2 charging grip. Each of these controllers have the GL/GR buttons, and you can actually quickly map other functionality to these buttons. If you hold the home button when you're in a particular game, it will remember this mapping and it can be done very quickly. You press the GL or GR and you assign the button you want. So I've actually remapped the A button to GR, so I'm holding that extra button that's on the grip of the controller to hold gas, and my thumb is completely freed up to do whatever it pleases with the camera while racing around, which also means I can look to the sides and shoot items. So there's a neat new strategy in Mario Kart World. In other interesting Mario Kart news, Nintendo of America has announced that the Mario Kart World Invitational 2025 tournament is taking place at Nintendo Live 2025 Tokyo on October 4th and 5th. So maybe start using those different GL/GR strats so you can shoot shells to your right and perhaps have a chance in this tournament. In other news, Mankalore on Twitter has discovered that the input you would use to enter land mode in Mario Kart 8 works for Mario Kart World as well. So you press L and R and then click the left stick in the main menu, and then you can swap between normal wireless play and LAN play, and as you see here, you can set that up. In perhaps a more slightly contentious story, we've learned that Samantha Kelly, the voice actor for Peach and Toad over the last 18 years or so, has been replaced because she was not featured in the credits for Mario Kart World. As here IGN writes, "Thank you for so many years of friendship and joy," Taylor wrote in a message to fans on Instagram. "I'm sad that it's over. I truly would have wanted to voice Peach and Toad forever. Nintendo let me know yesterday that they decided to recast these roles. I am grateful that I got to do these voices for so many years. Peach and Toad are such strong and beautiful characters that I pray they live forever no matter who voices them. So much love. Hashtag Princess Peach, hashtag Toad." So a lot of fans are unhappy about this because Samantha Kelly wanted to continue doing this and they're not happy that Nintendo replaced her. And some people are probably wondering why she only just found out when the game is coming out. Well, to my understanding, how it works, they record a variety of different voice clips of these different characters that they can place in a variety of different games and promotional material. So they would have made recordings for these characters a long time ago, basically, until they're invited in to record some new things. And those can be used in a variety of things, and Nintendo's decided to not use that in Mario Kart World. Now, we do know that they replaced the voice of Mario and such quite recently, so it looks like Nintendo's just doing an overall refresh to move forward. Now, here's the crazy story that's been going around. The Nintendo Switch 2 apparently saved someone's life. So here we have this story we're seeing on Reddit here, where they are a type 1 diabetic. And they had pre-ordered the Switch 2 through Walmart, and Walmart, for a lot of people, not me, I ordered my Switch 2 through Walmart, I didn't get this, but a lot of people were receiving a little bit of chips and soda alongside their Switch 2 when they got it in the morning. Now, this person, their blood sugar was dropping dramatically, they had no way to save themselves, but they remembered they had just received soda from Walmart, so that soda they were able to drink to recover themselves here, and they are claiming that this soda they got with the Switch 2 saved their life. That is a crazy story. Now today, during the Xbox Games presentation, they announced the Xbox ROG Ally. Basically, Xbox is partnering with ROG Ally. It's an Xbox branded ROG Ally. Some people are looking at this as kind of like a Switch 2 competitor. I don't think it's going to be really that much of a big difference. Perhaps it'll be a little bit better. Great for Microsoft, more options there. More reason for different games to actually also come to Switch 2, because if they're making sure all the different games can come to this platform, another handheld system, likely also they'll be able to come to Switch 2 as well. But something that was brought up during this presentation is that Silksong will be available when this console is out there. There's some debate if that means if this is a launch title or what have you. Point is, Silksong, we got an update on it, and it is supposed to come out this year and be playable on the Xbox Ally day one. Now, this part I'm going to mention here is a rumor, but an interesting one. So we've heard from Andy Robinson on Twitter, the CEO of Video Games Chronicle, that he's hearing Rare's new leadership could now be massive for the chances of a new Banjo-Kazooie. So that's exciting. Banjo-Kazooie has now higher chances to be made. It's interesting stuff. Of course, it could also imply that maybe it hasn't been in development yet. If you all remember, about a week or so ago, we were talking about a rumor, at this point I think it was a couple weeks ago, but we were talking about a rumor about how apparently there are some Xbox projects in the works that are being catered towards Nintendo Switch 2 fans or Nintendo Switch 2 owners, and I speculated that perhaps one of them could be some kind of Banjo-Kazooie game, especially considering we've heard about another rumor from Nate the Hate, who's considered to be well connected and have good sources, that there's been a Banjo-Kazooie project in the works for some time. Could this all be connected? Possibly. They might be different, separate projects as well. But Andy Robinson also hearing something that bodes well for Banjo-Kazooie, considering everything else we've discussed, it is just that. It bodes well for a Banjo-Kazooie to happen eventually, which we assumed, considering the relationship between Nintendo and Microsoft, would not only mean Banjo-Kazooie comes to Xbox, but also the Nintendo Switch 2. And I'm willing to bet that all parties involved would assume that Banjo-Kazooie would perform better on Switch 2, and they would definitely be making the game with that in mind. Banjo-Kazooie was initially an exclusive Nintendo series, so I would say it does make sense to think that, yes, Nintendo fans would more so appreciate a game like this, especially because a lot of Nintendo fans also prefer 3D platformers. So yeah, I feel good about my bet here, but we'll see what actually happens if and when this game ever does come out. Now, here's some other shocking news. We have gotten gameplay of Game Freak's next game from the Xbox Games Showcase. It has not been announced for Nintendo Switch 2. I don't think that means it can't come to Switch 2 eventually. If anything, I would argue that because it's being made by Game Freak, I would think that it can come to Switch 2 even more so. But Beast of Reincarnation, as you're seeing from the footage here, is being made by Game Freak, the developers of the Pokemon series, the mainline Pokemon games, which over the last few generations, they've been getting a lot of flack for because these games have not looked great, they have not performed great, and then here we are seeing Beast of Reincarnation looking like one of the best looking games, at least artistically, in the show. And it looks pretty impressive. If this was on Switch 2, we would be like, whoa, that's an impressive looking game. So it looks very cool. I think it's very interesting. I think it goes to show that Game Freak is absolutely capable of some pretty impressive visuals, and it definitely has me wondering, what are they doing with Pokemon? Now, while at first glance this game looks far more impressive than a Pokemon game, and I'm going to assume most people will believe that full-heartedly, I think it should be considered that we do not know the full scope of this game, the kind of content in this game. If it's focusing more on smaller spaces and there's not too much time being spent on creating all these different types of Pokemon designs and such, that they can put more attention and resources to what they're working on here. If Game Freak can pull something off like this, maybe they can do something special with the next generation of Pokemon. I doubt it's going to look this good, especially not on a larger scale, but perhaps we could be looking at a significant leap for the next game on Switch 2. Maybe that's a bit of hopium, but I have my fingers crossed. And at least Beast of Reincarnation looks like something worth checking out. But what do you all make of all this interesting and shocking Nintendo Switch 2 news we've learned about since launch? Let me know in the comments below. This is AndresRestart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I'll see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.